All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Mike Piercy, the owner, the founder, the CEO of the lab. And we just have an incredible opportunity to just connect with Mike. And he has been an incredible resource for us to send out athletes, especially all our basketball girls. They love going to him. And even more so, like he has catered and creates such a unique experience, a unique performance center that can help younger generation of athletes to actually, fine tune their skill set, but also discover their own potential and their own athletic ability. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming to the show, man.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. I always love to be in the presence of people who are great at what they do. So this is an honor to be here and have some fun, talk some shop, live the good life.
Well, I appreciate that. So could you tell our listener a little bit about who you are, how you get started on this journey?
So for me, we were talking a little bit about it before. For me, who I am is I'm a former athlete myself, played professional baseball in the minor leagues for New York Mets, Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Montreal Expos, which no longer exists. That has nothing to do with me whatsoever. But, I love this because we're Jersey guys, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I started in this industry at a young age. Like growing up, you have brothers, right? And they get into working out and things like that. And the first thing my brother got for his birthday, I think, was a weight set. And I remember him getting a weight set and turning, looking at me and was like, "You stay away from this weight set, or I'm going to kill you." So,
which make you want to use it?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. See, only in Jersey they understand that, right? So it's like, which made me actually get addicted to it. So to keep the peace in the house, my mom's kind of got me a Hulkamaniac workout set, which most people don't remember. Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania running wild. Mm-hmm. You had like a set of grippers, a jump rope, a poster with some exercises, half-ripped T-shirt, which you never fully ripped. But essentially, you get working papers at 15. So my mom basically went to a Bally's Total Fitness in Springfield and said, "Can my son have a job? He enjoys doing push-ups." Basically, that was what it was. They only really had training jobs. The guy said, "Oh, we can hire him as an apprentice trainer," so on and so forth. So she went home and basically opened this big yellow book they used to have, which was the phone book, right? Back before Google and everything else. And she started...
Yellow pages.
Yep, the yellow pages. And she started calling these certifying bodies and said, "Hey, my son reads all these fitness books. I want to see if he actually reads them or he's just looking at the pictures. Can he take your test?" And none of them would let me take the test. And she said, till she gave him the magic words that happen in fitness, "I'll pay you more money." Mm-hmm. And basically one of them let me take that test. I got a certification back then, 15, 16, went to work at Bally's Total Fitness. And then, that kind of started my love in the industry. Flash forward later on, went to work for New York Sports Club, which at the parent company was TSI. I spent a career there and so on and so forth. And got my first start really working with athletes when I got drafted and I was playing professional baseball, really. Went to King University, got drafted, and then I was off playing baseball, had some fitness knowledge of my own. So I'd have a teammate, my teammate would come up and say, "Mike, what you going to do today? I see you doing some stuff. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to set up these bands and do some stuff in the gym." And I'm going to come with you. They grab a couple teammates. "I'm going to do some sprints in the outfield." So, kind of most athletes got like a "I got hurt" story. Mm-hmm. I don't really have an "I got hurt" story. I got kind of decided at the end of my career, I wanted to come back and kind of envelop myself in the fitness industry, came back to working for New York Sports Club again. And then fell into the kind of this niche where I was working with athletes on a regular basis and decided I wanted to try my own hand at starting my own business. So I started the lab, which is probably 10, 11 years old now. One of the first athletes I had was Kareem McKenzie, who got his doctorate yesterday, but he was with the Giants 2 Super Bowls and had NFL athletes and some baseball guys and really just trying to give back from some. I remember coming into baseball, you always have these veterans who give you this wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it was Jose Lean who played years in the big leagues. And one thing he said to me, he said, "Youngster, by the time you know how to play this game, you won't be able to play it anymore." And then I laughed, just like you laughed, and I thought it was funny. But then later on, you kind of realize it. So the thing is, when I coach athletes now, it's you wonder why you coach that way, but it's the wisdom of understanding that you know more, that you could have done some different things. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we've advanced a lot when we look at the athlete now and what we can give them, especially going downstairs. You guys, you just watch what you can do to bring an athlete back to life, from injury, but also in the performance realm, just knowing that we can give more from the whole entire aspect of working with them from a 360-degree approach is so much more than strength and conditioning, than just exercise and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's trying to get back. I know it's a little wordy for the question you asked me.
No,
but
I honestly, I took way more from that. Dude, we have so much similarity that I didn't even realize. So I started my fitness career at New York Sport Club as well.
boom.
There you go. So I actually started at West Nyack in the Palisade Mall.
Love it.
I actually started as I used to do kids' birthday party. And I enjoy working out so much. And my main goal was working at New York Sport Club. I couldn't be a trainer then. I didn't want to pay for gym membership. So I was like, how do I not pay for gym membership? And I said, oh, I'll work. And I'll do kids' birthday party. I would just run like laser tag birthday party. And then after I finish, I would go up and I would work out. And then eventually I started working out with some trainers. And you know, people take you under their wing.
Yeah,
right. And then from
exactly.
there you learn from them. And then they're like, all right, why don't you go get certification? And then like you just kind of need that permission. Like, oh, you think I can do this too? Mm-hmm. And then as soon as you hear that, you're like, oh, okay, all right, it's on then. Like, and what I love about your mom, man, and I think every time we sit in this room, we do podcasts, and people tell their story, and then it has to do with mom pushing them forward. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that so much, just because your mom didn't have to do that, but the fact that she went and did that, it just gave you permission to pursue the things that you can pursue, and I love this. When we get good parents into the building, they see potential for their child that no one else could ever see in it. And then the fact that they believe in their child so much go a long way, especially with sport or overcoming injuries and training. So I appreciate that so much, that story. So based on your beginning, like in the beginning at like the age of 15, you start training people. How did you start incorporating fitness and lifestyle? Because you were probably ahead of your time. It sounded like you were ahead of your time during that time because you didn't have any injury history that stopped you from playing. You actually are one of the few that kind of got to choose to hang up the cleats and then start going back to come full circle in some way.
Mm-hmm. So the thing is, like at a young age, it really was, like you said, mentorship was important. So so it's like when I tell that story, a lot of times people think, hey, I had this whole client roster. No, it was like I was under, Dr. Natty or Trainer Nat, and then I was like learning, and he would teach me things. One of the things is like just one of the things he would teach me is like creativity and variety in training, right? And a lot of times people will come up to me and ask like, oh, well, how do you come up, a lot of skill-based stuff is because he would say, give me a piece of equipment and say, make a workout based on that. Make a workout based on this. And I learned a lot by that. So now it was like, if I could have any piece of equipment and pretty much try to put a workout together. Flash forward when I think about just being able to hang up the cleats and stuff like that. I had this conversation with an athlete yesterday, and I thought it was a super interesting concept because we talked about it on the way up with youth sports, the schedules, and just so much activity, right? That so much activity leads to a burnout, right? And I think what we don't sometimes understand from the athletic perspective in this youth realm is like, it's not often looked at this way, but being an athlete at the highest level is a form of artistry. Like when you look at an artist, we marvel at things. We marvel at Michael Jordan because we just watch artistry at its finest. You know what I mean? That's athletic artistry when you see it. I look at Allen Iverson the same way. I told him that it's like when you watched them.
Poetry in motion.
Poetry in motion, but just watch everything that they do. It's their art. It's how they have whatever they have that's inside comes out of them. And it's not often looked at that way because, for whatever reasons, it's not. But when you get to a certain point and it becomes a job or it becomes a laborious task or things like that, when then you know that it's something else that you should be doing. So for me, towards the end of my career, I realized that wasn't, I had this watershed moment. I remember being in a hotel room in New Hampshire, because I think the last team I played for was like the Nashua Pride or something. And it had rained for maybe 10, 12 straight days, it was so weird. So we were working out in this bubble. And every day we would go and practice in this bubble and whatever it is. And I remember one day I was in the room just kind of looking out the window and I was hoping that it would rain. But I remember flashing back to being a kid, putting on my Little League uniform, and when it would rain, I would cry because I knew we weren't going to play that day. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know what? This is not something maybe that I should be doing. Or it's time for you to go. I think what's missing a lot, and the reason why we had this conversation yesterday, is sometimes a rest is good, a break is good, because then you come back to that artistry and you have something to bring to it. You know, for us, we'll think of The Last Dance when Michael Jordan went away to play baseball, right? You have that break. Now I'm just on a bus playing baseball. I'm away from basketball. But then you have a trigger moment maybe that brings you back into that moment. Now for me, that trigger moment brought me back into the fitness industry in reverse. But I think that when you see the youth athlete and things like that, and it's just to kind of extrapolate it to that, it's good sometimes to take a break and move away from it, not to be in 7,000 activities or 7,000 teams and things like that. Not all the time, but it's good because when you come back to it, you missed it a little bit. Now I got something to say, all right, you know what? And, you know, I do really love doing this. Or you move on and you go and you do something else because that's where this, you know, the journey was supposed to take you, you know.
I love that, man, because I say this to parents all the time. It's like, listen, look, when you show up to work, are there days that you just hate being there? They're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, doesn't it feel repetitive? They're like, yeah. I was like, well, your kid's going through the same thing. If they're playing exact same sport all the time, they're on the bus, they're on this drive, they got to do all this. There's all this pressure that's coming on them. And sports now is so different.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I only been in the field for 5 years, but within 5 years, I mean, we talk about AAU basketball, how it's expanded so much. And I think the intention in the beginning was so pure. It's so good for the sport. But now when you start introducing like monetization and money into things, now it's becoming a money grabbing opportunities where it's, you know, now everyone has to have like an awesome uniform. They charge X amount for that. Now everybody got to go on to this tournament. And again, we were talking about like just how they get so crafty at advertising certain tournament to make sure like, oh, it's a one in a lifetime opportunity. There'll be scout from this and that. And I always go back to the old principles. Like, if you're good, people will find you.
Oh, it's so much crazier now because the thing is with baseball, growing up, right, you had to go to these, for me, you had to go to showcase camp. You had to go to tryout camp. You have every year somebody sends you a thing and you need to sign up and go, and then you would have to go to San Diego to do whatever it is. Like, if they're good, they'll find you, but you have like a locator in your pocket.
Yeah.
Like that, if I could just post a video of me playing ball, of doing things like that, you can create your own buzz. We've watched people do it, you know, and you watch a lot of things like with, you know, NIL and stuff is a big deal right now. But for the most part, yeah, youth sports, I remember the days when you just signed up and this is like it could be like a soapbox moment, but there's the issue with that a lot of times is there's very few opportunities for development anymore, right? And that's why it becomes problematic, I think, because there's very few places because of so much money and everything that everywhere you go, it's about results as opposed to some aspects. I mean, like when you're in therapy, you know, and then you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one of the few places that I'm going to go and it's about me actually getting better. But the problem with that is the temptation is to rush that experience because I need to get back into the grind of all of this, you know, whirlwind of things like that prevents that. So when we talk about the lab and stuff like that, for me, I always wanted to be one of the few places that's a respite area for an athlete, right? Or to a place that advocates for the athlete, or the one place that you have actual development, that is not, you know, us yelling at you is not based on whether you made the shot, whether you got the bunt down, whether you hit the home run, whether you scored a touchdown. You know, it's not based on those. It's really based on how can we get better today and how can we put ourselves in the best situation to have success.
Yeah. And I love that. I want you to dive into a little bit more of the lab or the foundation of the lab, or even the thought of creating the lab when you were hanging up your cleats, right? Because obviously those transition phase is scary for everybody when you're like, this is what I've been doing for the X amount of year of my life. Now I'm about to stop it. And now I'm going to go do this thing. It's exciting, but it's also scary at the same time. Like, walk me through that moment of like when the concept of the lab came into your head of like, all right, if I'm going to go back home to Jersey, I'm going to go back to the fitness industry. Here's how I would do it now based on what I know.
Okay. So the funny part about that is I went back home and I went to work for New York Sports Club, right? And I was working for New York Sports Club for, I think I was the longest in the history of the company. I was probably the longest tenured fitness manager in one location. I was in the West Caldwell location as a fitness manager. And I think at that time the NFL lockout happened, and I started to get, you know, some guys from that and just training them on a regular basis. So a lot of I speak at conferences now as well and do a good thing of presenting, and then people will always come up to me and say, well, how did you know when it was time to start your business. When you have too many complaints. And that's the way it looked. So for me, I would come in every day and I would have a complaint about this, and I have a complaint about that. And I was just really rigid in the way that I would do things. And I'm like, you know what? It wasn't the best place at that point, because I feel like when you get to a certain growth aspect, it's like an athlete. When you get to it, it's like an athlete that doesn't want to go through a rebuild, right? When you watch athletes and you're like, you rather trade this dude because they're not going to go through a rebuild. They're going to be a problem. Yeah. And I think that when you get to that, your growth has terminated in that space. So for me, what I did was I took a job with a team. I won't say it was the worst thing I should have done, but for me, it actually gave me the insight to know, I'm like, you know what, I want to try to, go and do this on my own, because what they did is they had me in a facility. I won't say which team it was, but they had me in a private facility they had in, White Plains, New York, and you're working with athletes and things like that. And I'm like, you know what, some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I didn't agree with. But it was time for me to really go and try. And, I had a unique way that I thought that I wanted to have athletes, develop in their way, and a different training philosophy that I wanted to implement. And I wanted to be more of a safe zone, it's great to chase, athletes that can be clickbait. And it's like, hey, I got this athlete, I got this athlete, I got this athlete. But there's another joy when you become a place for all athletes to just go, because it's based on like a love of an athlete obsession, right? So it's nothing gives me more, pride, or the coaches more pride than you see an athlete who they just worked, but they weren't the most popular athlete on the team. They weren't the person that all the scouts were coming to see, but now they start to have some successes because it's because of the practices and the hard work that they've been putting in on a daily basis that's now leading to this success. And I wanted to build a place that's for that. And then for me, I grew up Hillside, Irvington, New Jersey. Never had like these type of places. Like I wish I had a me or somebody that knew the stuff, or a place like that to go. And that, I wanted to have a place like that for athletes, that you could just come and then, it's great. And then the love is not conditional. It's very few places like that it's like, that the love is not conditional. It's conditional on you putting in the 100 to 20% of whatever you have that day to get better.
I think this, like when you're an athlete, or when you identify yourself as an athlete, there's this whole effect where only an athlete would understand what other athletes going through. Like just like only a business owner would understand what other business owner are going through, right? It's almost like a creed, and it's its own its own like tribe in some way. So to create a space for someone to come in and be vulnerable and like, yeah, man, I'm going through that too. Like, yeah, like some of the conversation we have in here, like we have some kids who were committed to like Division I, but then also got decommitted, right? And then that went like because of injury, right? Like where else can you talk to that? And like my story is very similar to you, where when I started out in a physical therapy space, everything is very corporate like, and it's also high volume and all of that stuff. So like athletes were just working with, people who are older than them, and they like the older people, like they can't identify that, right? So the fact that we have a place, and like the way I look at the space we have downstairs, like it's built by an athlete for athletes, for them to be able to have that conversation. That's okay to be like, yeah, man, I know it sucks. You just got decommitted. Like I'm going through this right now. But then there's also a light at the end of the tunnel where they see a 3 months progression of who they could be on the other side on the turf doing agility. They're like, oh wait, we have exact same surgery. The scar looked the same. And I was like, oh, so you're telling me in 3 months I could be able to do that? So now there's a hope in some way, right? Because like the like I always say, PT is a grudge purchase, because no one wants to come to PT because it sucks. You're in pain, but there's also a big despair associated with pain. So when people come in, they're at like almost the lowest point of their life. But then to see someone that's look like them, sound like them, going through the same thing, doing something that they wish they can do in the future, now there's a glimpse of hope. And I think that's what's really cool, even with the lab, because I've seen the vibe that you put out on your social media, and it seemed, and all the people that we interact with, like they always come in, they have a smile on their face, even though they know they're in pain. They're about to get their ass beat a little bit, right? Like when it comes to pushing a little bit out the boundary. Doubt. But they do that with a smile on their face. And I think that's literally the most rewarding thing for me as a therapist, where like all right, I'm going through the trenches with you. I know you're going through a lot. I'm giving you 100, you give me 110. That's some of the best days I could have in my life.
Yeah, the thing about you look at that athlete aspect, and there's something that's I think not talked about enough. The funny thing about it is the majority we talk about youth sports, and we could go on this for like 2 hours, but to have that other athlete perspective, I mean, I remember when I first started, it was to be able to tell an athlete that, like, my journey is terminated as far as that's concerned. There's nothing I can gain from you. Like, I'm not trying to win the championship. There's nothing I can gain. I went on my journey already, right? So the journey now for me is to help you get to where you want to go and to avoid the pitfalls, but to have joy. The only happiness that we can gain, right, is that you go on to great things. Now, maybe, you wear, a Myokinetix t-shirt or a lab t-shirt and you tell everybody where you went or you just love it. But at the end of the day, that's really the service, right? What's the quote? Like, service is the price you pay for your spot here on earth, right? It's to serve other people. So for me, it's to serve athletes, really. And then that athlete perspective is to know that, like you just said, it's certain things that you're going to get. So I had this magazine do a feature like a couple years ago, and then I said, being an athlete is not a qualifier that makes you a great coach. And all these people go, oh, it doesn't.
It's true.
Because it's the thing about it, as an athlete, everybody tells you what to do. I show up and I get a therapist that takes me through. I got a coach that takes me. And at no point at all am I putting together workouts or doing assessments or doing things like that. The one thing that it does give us from being an athlete is a context to me to know what your journey is like, to know when you are telling me you don't have it, but you do have a little bit more, or to know that, hey, maybe you just don't have it today and I can assess that and I know where we can go with that, but it gives me a context. And then also it gives me an understanding of where you are on your journey, right? And how it might be different. The biggest difference with athletes was like working with pros is understanding like where they are in their career. Like if I got a really young guy in his career, like we can go and we're gonna improve. If it's towards the later end, I might just be trying to keep you on the field, bro. You know what I mean? And not be injured and things like that. In middle career, we have a lot of different things. Same thing with youth athletes. It's where are we? Are we young in the game where we need to learn just our basic movement quality and learn how to to discover our body? Or are we now at the point where schools are looking and things like that, and you have this crazy schedule and we're trying to manage it and stuff like that? It's just different aspects of understanding from an athlete's perspective that maybe, I've gone through that and now I can speak to the experience and I can give you some wisdom that may change the way you look at the situation you experience, especially in times when things aren't going well and when things are. Because there's danger to both, right?
If it's going too, if things are going too well, you're flying too close to the sun, right? And
there you go. There you go. You can stop the podcast right now. Because sometimes you're flying too close to the sun, and it's like Icarus, right? Those wings start to melt. You don't know what to do. The wings are melting around you, and you're like, oh man. But at the same time, there's times when whatever you're gonna get, you get to a certain point where what you used to do is not working anymore, right? And you need somebody that might not have anything. That session might have more to do with what's going on up here than what's going on with the exercise or what's going on with the movement, what's going on with the load and how we're doing things like that. And that's where that athlete perspective comes in, because it's like the stories that you used to get from those older trainers or those older things. It comes into play because now you're like, oh man, I needed to hear that, or I needed to know that, or I needed to know that this was okay. I had a conversation just recently with an athlete. It's like, it's all right to be tired, because I think that at some point when you're going through this journey of all of these different activities, you're conditioned to tell people, I'm all right. I can push through it, but at some point that's not, you have to know when that's okay and when it's not, and then that athlete background, I think, comes into play with that.
I love what you mentioned as asking the question, like, where are we? I think that's such a profound but simple but the most insightful question you can ask them. Like, where are we in your journey? Like, what are we doing? And some of the question that we like to ask is something similar, but it's also having to do with the parents as well. Because working, like I can say, like I love working with athletes, but the hardest thing to deal with is managing the expectation of the parents for the athletes, right? So how do you go ahead and set up those kind of conversations to have to educate parents to have good realistic expectation of what their child's doing right now, and you being someone that they hired to help their child go through that journey, you might have to have a transparent conversation like, hey, whatever path you think the child's going on, like this is where we're at. Here's what we need to do to assess, and just be upfront. Sometimes you have to. It's not the kid's dream. It's the parents' dream that's imposed on the kids. So how do you go and navigate through that?
You know what? The funny thing, it's the toughest. It is truly the toughest thing to do now because it's an ongoing thing that you learn more every day, right? And then I think it's a trust thing, right? You know, once you get to a certain element of trust, and it's a trust for what you do, and it's, you know, and especially speaking, that's why we connected, you know what I mean? From trust of parent and athlete, you know, that's how we connected. You're gonna have some, like you just said, it's like we talk about that athlete aspect, right? It's a slippery slope because I think that in a lot of ways, with the way that the youth aspect is set up, it's a lot of, you know, living through whatever, you know, the kid might be doing. I think that having those conversations, I remember years ago I had a young kid, and he's still with me now, and he's, you know, he was a lot younger than when we first moved into our new space, like maybe 6 years ago, and he was smaller then. And I remember his dad comes in and he says, you know, let me know what you think about this. I'm thinking of sending him to this youth combine. I think he was like maybe 12 at the time, right? And I said, you know what? So a couple of things could happen here. And like, so this conversation is an interesting one, right? I'm like, because he could go there and he could perform really poorly, right? I was like, but what I think might be worse is he could go there and he could be the number one 12-year-old and, you know, such. Because what happens then is it feels like I don't need to work. You know, and when I think of that, I think that's even worse than before, than being the worst, right? And it's a situation that you have to manage because when we think about the parents, we don't want them to be enemies. But we do have to have a level of trust that you have to have an understanding that sometimes we need to, you know, we might be pushing the car too hard. And then it's like the great arms race, right? It's like you got missiles, I got to have missiles, you know, and then you see all of the other kids are doing this thing. So in some way, it's, what do they call it? FOMO? It's fear of missing out, right? So it's like if I don't have them do these 7 tournaments, they're going to be behind these people. But it's not necessarily true. Because when you look at the research behind it, burnout happens, right? And then you also may be having your best years way before you were supposed to. So your development is being stunted because you're moving at a pace that, you know, like the schedules of professionals aren't what some of the schedules are. So I think that when we talk about the parent, I think that it has to be a trust level established, right? And on both ends. Because when we talk about being an advocate for the athlete, because sometimes the athlete will tell you things that they won't tell the parent.
Of course, yeah.
And we have to be able to bridge it. And the way I look at it is the way that you view agents in professional sports, right? And it's the agent is not there. People think the agent's there to do all this wheeling and dealing. They just not there for that. The agent's there so that when Natty comes in and says he wants $1 million, and the team says, well, we're not giving Natty $1 million. He got caught stealing 40 times last year. So I go back and I say, Natty, man, they think you're great. They just think that you need to not get caught so much, and they're cool with it. You know, so it's for us, I think the best way of doing that is to try to be an advocate for the athlete with the parent, but to be able to try to play the agent in between. Because sometimes, you know, the child might be injured. You know, it might not be that they're lazy. It might not be anything, but they're injured. But the schedule is pretty much not, and they don't want to. You know, part of it is not that they don't want to do it; it's that they don't want to disappoint you. You know, and that's worse. That's worse than just, you know, tearing the ACL. That's worse than, you know, popping the hamstring. That's worse than them to have to feel like you're disappointed because the performance isn't there.
Yeah, because I mean, injury, soft tissue injury, or whatever, bone injury, they heals, but like those kind of conversations of being a disappointment to your parents, that lasts forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that it'll keep psychologists in have income forever. It's this kind of thing, right? Because
it's trauma.
It's trauma, but it can also carry forward to the next generation as well. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think another thing that I was talking to another parents about this morning was sometimes parents listen to other parents and they don't question the motive of those parents or where the parents get that source of information from. Mm-hmm. And I think another thing we're doing now as society is that we judge other parents, or we try to, we're addicted to making ourselves look better compared to other parents. And like, oh, well, your kids go to 5 tournaments. Well, mine go to 17. So I'm a better parent than you because I'm really able to commit my time to fly them, to do all this stuff. And it's become like, lack of a better word, it's a pissing contest. Mm-hmm. But the outcome is kind of still gray because like we're so new where what I've seen so far is with all repetitive playing same sport all the time is increased likelihood of chronic injury. Mm-hmm. Doesn't increase likelihood of them getting recruited higher. Mm-hmm. Doesn't increase translation in them playing at like Division I or even professional. If you look at it statistically speaking, the kids that play in Little League World Series, maybe less than 1% of them will actually go and play in the MLB.
Yep, true. And the thing is, I think, and this is like I said, it's a very weighty topic because we look at it and I think that like, hey, all the tournaments is like they're gonna get seen by more people. But it's like for us in the business, do you really want to market bad product? Mm-hmm. You don't really want to. That's not good because it's like, all right, yeah, more people are seeing it, but it's not the product that you want to see because I'm out and I'm playing at like 70 or 60% of what I usually am, during whatever the high school season is. And now you're seeing me at not my best. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When I think about it. And that's why I say it's a hard topic because it's an ongoing thing because we're constantly trying to figure out ways to build the relationship and then also navigate this new youth landscape and space where some of it is problematic, because it is basically designed and put up on volume. Mm-hmm. The more stuff that we do, which doesn't leave room for you to actually improve from a standpoint of strength, speed. When is all these things supposed to happen? Mm-hmm. You're trying to stack those in with actual competitive gameplay at the same time. When if you look at professional athletes, and people will say, well, because they're pros. No, at some point they had to get there. Mm-hmm. They have an off season where you have a chance to periodize workouts and then have some rest. And then we go back to that artistic aspect of it, that they never go through that, that initial spring. For me, I remember when I first stopped playing, like the problem that I really had is that during the spring I would smell grass. Mm-hmm. And that meant it for me, body-wise, mentally and everything else, that meant I'm supposed to be playing right now, and it was hard because I'm like, yeah, I smell grass, I smell dirt. So now I got to do, that's why I could never coach. Because I can't be around it and not play center field. I can't be around it and not like be at the plate. Like it's hard. So it was the toughest thing. So if you're constantly playing, it becomes a job before time. You know what I mean? And that's hard because now there is no artistic expression. It's like the writer that's got writer's block, right? It's like the artist who's standing in front of the canvas and nothing's coming out, right? And then it's a hard thing to think about. So it's tough. I mean, I think that's a great loaded question. Like with the parents, it's hard. How do we manage that?
I think that's another thing. There's this concept of flow, right? Which is when you're in the zone, everything's blocked out. Everything just go like almost subconsciously. Everything just go the way you want, but in order to access flow is you actually need to be in the moment, at peace, and being able to enjoy the challenge that you're facing at the right moment, right? When you can make hard stuff fun, that's when you really start being creative. And again, we just to circle back to watching Iverson, watching Kobe, watching Jordan play is their way of like expressing their creativity, but through movement, through sport. And if you making this is a mundane thing, where it's a day-to-day, you got to get up, you got to do this and that. Like maybe the conversation with the parents would be like, again, like what you asked your athlete, like where are we? Like, hey, where are we at this season? How are you feeling? I think the biggest thing that I always give advice to parents is like on the ride home, check in with your kids. Don't talk about the stat. Don't talk about how well they did on this. Like, hey, how are you feeling? I think we're solely so far away because, again, your parents are comparing their child to another child that is not theirs. And again, it's the same thing as if the kids come up to you and be like, well, so-and-so mom let them do this and that. Why can't you let me? Right? And like, where are you getting all this comparison from? And you shouldn't play that game because now you're pigeonholing your kids to start comparing themselves to that person you just compared themselves to.
Yeah.
Right? And again, that's more trauma.
Yeah. You know what I got? And this is a good resource. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there was this thing called Trophy Kids.
No, I haven't seen that.
So if you've never seen it and somebody's watching it and you coach kids, it's a must-see. But it came out, I don't know how many years ago. And I remember watching it. And this was before I owned my business. I think it came out maybe the first couple of years when I first opened. And what it is it's parents that, it's parents with very poor behavior in reference to sports. So they're trying to like basically create the next Tiger Woods or the next whatever. But you wouldn't believe that some would behave like that and then they know the camera's there. So you have actually a dad that's ready to physically fight his son based on the game. And I'm serious, you watch it. And then you bring up stories like this is, so far back like Todd Marinovich. And Todd Marinovich was a #1 pick and just, kind of breed it from locker room to locker room. And then you watch a lot of different things. For me, my perspective is a little different because I never had my dad played, but we never had like car conversations. It was never, a situation where I ever was worried about that, and it was always a space to go. If I was struggling, he waited for me to come to him to ask for stuff. It was never, and I never felt like that. I think one of the most important things is like, if you ever watch Survive in Advance, 30 for 30, I tell everybody, if you ever coach anybody, like that is 1 hour of like required watching. 30 for 30 Survive in Advance with Jimmy Valvano. And he was before my time as a coach, but like if you watch what he did, but the one thing he talked about when he first became the coach of NC State, he would call his dad all the time because he wanted to win a national championship. So every year they would come short. And his dad would say, "You're going to make it. My bags are packed. I'm going to come. My bags are packed." And it became a thing that they said all the time. Whenever he wouldn't make it to the NCAA championship, "My bags are packed." And he in his speech, he was saying, I couldn't understand what it is. He was one of those people that whenever I talked to him, I always felt better, about what was going on. I always felt more confident or whatever it is. And he's like, he gave me the one thing that, the best thing you could give anybody. He gave me hope, and I think that's dope. For me as a coach, that's what I want. Like if an athlete comes in and that day, hey, they might have crap worth of energy, right? They might, not be what it is. But I don't want that. I always want them to feel better leaving, right? Even if I'm giving them crap all day long, it's like I want them to feel better when they leave than what it was. Because that was the way my dad didn't talk as much as I do. Like he was from the South. He said very little thing, but when he did say something, it had weight to it. But I did feel better at times competing, right? And I think that's what's lost a lot of times with that parent-athlete relationship is that it becomes a lot more about performance and how you didn't, what we could have done to be better. And then it becomes a situation where what I call the car conversation, where I'm dreading that more than me striking out with the bases loaded. It's like, I got to have like this conversation.
It's like when your wife texts you, "We need to talk." Like there's nothing good coming out of that conversation.
Yeah, that's a bad day now. That's a bad day now.
Well, yeah, I mean, like it's just for the parents that are listening, like when you do that to your kids, that's like your spouse texting you, "We need to talk."
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because when I think that like you're so successful at what you do here, and I know you're great at what you do because like Kylie Capstraw for us is the queen of girls basketball for us because she's just awesomeness. But she started coming to you, and then her and her mom came, and they were like they do great stuff, so we wanted to connect with you. But the thing is, it was great. Is that I feel like when athletes leave here and they come back to us, they feel so much better. They're like, you know what, that's great. I feel strong. And then they were doing most of the things like you said. There's nothing wrong with, you know, therapy and the regular stuff. But the thing that you do is you have athletes. And then the one thing I remember she said to me, it's like, it's all high level athletes and it's good to be in that space. You feel good. I want people when they leave, my athletes to leave, it's like, hey, yeah, we did a strength workout. Yeah, we got faster. We got stronger. But you might have talked about something that you couldn't talk about anybody with, you know, and now you left and then now you feel better. Or you could have just had that car conversation. And now it's like, you know what? It's not so bad that, you know, I didn't make all the shots. I didn't do everything else. I'm going to feel a little bit better. Or it's not that bad that I didn't, you know, get the bunt down, stuff like that. You know, there is a way of me improving psychologically, right? And I think that that's missing a lot because
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I love I think most of our conversations have been more soft skill. We don't even get technical on the training stuff because the soft skill is it's not tangible. Right? You and I can't go and market like, oh, we're going to help you with your soft skill. The negative self-talk is going to be going away. Like parents not going to pay for that. Right. And I think as us running our businesses is that we have to understand, like we have to put an excellent product that helps solve the most apparent problem, which is mostly physical, right? Because you and I address physical problem, but really, once again, to our world for a little bit, and then we're like, all right, let's sprinkle some of the soft stuff in there, like how you talking to yourself, you know, how you sleeping, how you eating, and all of that stuff. What's the conversation like in the weight room? What's the conversation like with your coach? Like, what else are you going through? Like, it's so funny because like if Dr. Jen's downstairs, she's working with all the female athletes. Sometimes I hear some boys' problem, and I'll come in and I was like, all right, that's boy problem. Like, what can I do to add to that? And then I would add in like, yeah, that's why guys are stupid. So like these are things that is extremely important. Like they might not want to talk to their parents about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's as a job of a physical therapist, as a coach, I think that's our obligation to serve. You serve in so many different ways, and I want to get your point on that, your thought on it. Like with your role, what you do now, where you are, and you know, in your career, what are like 3 things that you think like you are doing for your athletes that is fundamentally important for them and is not speaking about it enough in the industry?
I think advocating. We talked a lot about it. For us, we've hit on a lot of it. One is advocating for the athlete, because the thing is that doesn't mean you go. I think a lot of times we think advocation is you. We talked a lot about the parent relationship. It's to be able to really be able to be a bridge for that relationship, because now it's needed. Like it's not sometimes, and the parent might respect what you say, you know, more so than the other coach that they have, because the coach is, you know, their winning is based on how good the athlete's going to do, right? And I think advocating, being able to say, hey, you know, I think it might be good to take some rest. It might be good to go to this place. It might be good to do those things. And I think that that's one thing. Being able to be, or being able to know that athlete comes in maybe 2-3 times a week, and that sometimes we need to adjust what it is for recovery. I might be leaking into my number 2 one, but it's understanding like that if the athlete comes in and says, my knee's bothering me, that they might be conditioned to tell people, no, I can go through it. But they need to know when that's not okay. So sometimes, you know, number 2 would be understanding athletes, you know, from a 360-degree perspective and talking to them about that. You know, because of Instagram and dopamine hits and things like that, and then being able, if you look at our Instagram, it's all athletes now, right? It's all young athletes because we want them to feel the shine, right? But also, we're not super interested in clickbait for so on and so forth, right? It's about the work. But at the same time, we want to talk to you about what's nutrition like, what's your life like, what do we got going on, so that we can create, you know, programs designed around what it is. I think that's most missing in the industry of what it is to understand that, like, and I'll tell a parent this when they come in, you know, for initial assessment, things like that. You're not going to a trainer anymore because it's like, if I gave you 12 exercises and said just do these, you could go do those on your own. You don't need me to do that. Yeah. You need somebody to manage this process for you. That's gonna, and this goes back to that relationship, right? That's gonna say, all right, well, what should you be doing with therapy, and where should you be going for that? And then somebody that says, hey, when you walk in and to ask the question, did they clear you from therapy yet to come back? And then be able to work with those people. So the thing is, when you look at it, you're almost like the team leader. So you have to say, what's the team? Because now every athlete has a team of people they're working with. And your job is to put this program into place, actually help them see it through, and to help them be an organizer and a resource for them. That's what I think is missing a lot of times, is being able to be a resource. A lot of what we see in our industry is kind of, I'll make it up as I go. You know what I'm saying? Which is you want to talk pet peeves with me? That drives me crazy.
Oh, every athlete get exact same workout in that same day.
Or worse, every athlete gets what you made up in the car on the way in because you just saw 6 drills from the guy that you've been following. And now I don't want to use it, but now we're just jumping over shit. You know what I mean? And crazy stuff. There's no progression. There's no things like, there's no understanding of where we are. What's the schedule like? And I think it's needed. You have to have planning. There has to be programming. There has to be periodization. That's why you try to set up an environment that has that, so that when the athlete is away, my biggest goal when so the funny thing is I talked about how we became, kind of acquainted, and that's great. So for me, working with athletes, I never thought that I would have so many just great girl basketball players and things like that. For me, when I started, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have baseball players. I'm gonna have to, but it's great. But my goal when I was working with whoever it was, is that when they go away and they walk into a weight room, I don't need nobody's help for nothing. I know how to put my weights on. I know what program I'm supposed to be doing. Even if the strength coach doesn't have stuff, I know how to do that. I know I'm empowered in the fact that I got this taken care of, so this is not going to be a pitfall for me. So even if you have the same workout for every single athlete, I got a program and a resource to kind of supplement that, and I'm okay. Because the athlete in high school, I think that this is not talked about also, how short the window is. And I don't think the window gets shorter the further you go down the line, because it can be over at any time. And I don't think that people talk about it so much. So like youth, I have a lot of time with those kids, right? But once high school hits, that goes like a blink, because you're a freshman today, and then next thing you know, we're doing senior stuff, and we're talking about college. The window's short. And then now we're trying to figure out whether we're playing in college or not. Now, once we get to college, we're talking about whether we're going off into regular life, we going overseas, or we going pro, or we going whatever, or am I getting drafted in baseball, or what's that life going to be like? But the reason why I bring that up is because that athlete may be away from you for a prolonged period of time. So I might have had an athlete that's high school that's down the street. Now I'm able to see them all year round. But once they go off to college, I'm going to see you when you come home, maybe. If you come home, maybe you decide, hey, and that's okay. But the key is that they have access to the resources they need. And I think that that's number 2, to be able to actually create real programming that's usable and practical for them. So that would be advocating in that. And then to be able to be a source of wisdom and a sounding board. I think that we're people, we're humans, right? At the end of the day, athletes are humans, and it goes into what we talked about before. To be able to have, what's missing a lot, I think, is everything is so conditional. Everything is based on results. Everything is based on who can I, share that's going to bring more people to the doors and things like that. And I think that what's missing is the human approach of saying, every athlete comes to the door everyone's not going to go pro, but I think that that's fine. That's not the problem. The challenge is, how can we get the best capability out of every single athlete? How can I get you to use every ounce of what you have, so that at the end of this journey, you don't sit in the chair right now and you wish that you did more than what you could have done to be at your best. You know that we got every single ounce of everything that we could have got out, and it might be a great journey and it'd be a great ride. And now, we welcome you to come back and still be part of it, but in a different way, because you might have to come back and give a speech to the next kids that are coming forward and things like that. But and then know that this was a place for me to help develop myself, not just as an athlete, but I developed as a person, as a human being. And when we left, what's the quote say? Uncoachable athletes become unemployable adults. And it's so true. We all know them, right?
Yeah.
And then That's really what it is. The third aspect is really understanding from a human aspect that everybody sees athletes and they see toys. You know, oh, I can do anything with them. I can have them jump over stuff. I can do whatever. From the human aspect is everyone's got goals, dreams, and we talked about the pressures and the different things that's going on. How can we create a space for them that makes them comfortable, but we don't have to live and sit in that? We can actually move forward. We can be a great, not just resource, but a great sounding board, but also a place of comfort. And I think that that's what's missing, that human aspect. That everything is about, hey, what can we get to post? What can we get to do this? What can we do that? You know, because we want everybody to see who we have. Yeah. And for me, I just think that's whack.
No, and look, I appreciate that, man, because that's what we see on the trend, right? And I think to sum it up from what I've just took in, it's like, again, most people, there's some people in the industry where they just go, in any industry, is more self-serving to utilize the athletes and his or her ability to raise the status of the trainer or the PTs or the business, rather than say, well, what am I doing to help raise the status of this athlete who's paying me, which is kind of weird, right? You're here to serve that person in front of you. And I think the conversations always be, how do I get this person in front of me to win? And once I help them to get to win, whatever that definition of winning is, we can define them together. I can help them get there. Once we get there, great. I always believe that if we do the right thing by for the people in front of us, it's always going to come back, no matter what. And the less you ask for it, the more it comes back.
You're so absolutely right. And it's like, the one thing you just hit on is like, how can we get them to win, right? And that for you, that might be All-American. For somebody else, that might be, hey, I just want to make a team, you know, and that's great. And at the end of the day, it's so many aspects now that are based on, you know, you just talked about a comparison, you know, comparison of this and comparison of that. And it's I used the word before, it's conditional, because you can't tell me you're about development if we're cutting people. So it's not about development at that point, but you got to have a place. So what's that place for me as an athlete? Where is that place? And for us, we want to be that place. It's not, you know, training and stuff like that. Yeah, obviously that's the central aspect, but a lot of it is what other aspects of the athlete are there, right, that are impeding your progress, right, that you may or may not need to talk about, or that are part of why you are where you are on that stage of like injury or returning from an injury. What's your mind state like, you know, and how can we help you with that? Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I love it. I know we're coming to a close.
No, it's all good.
Before anything, what I would like to ask you, like, just one last question, right? If you were to put up any billboard that parents can see on the way to the game, what would that billboard say?
You know what? I would say we train the total athlete. You know what I mean? So that's really what we want to be. We want to be a place but also a place for the athlete to feel comfortable, to develop. You know, so we're a development place. We're a place for athletes to become the best versions of themselves. You know, to be in that process to become the best versions of themselves.
I love it, man. Mike, where can people find you?
You can find me at thelabsports.com. You can go to MikePiercy.com. You can also find us on Instagram, thelabsports.com. And at the same time, you can go to my own Instagram, which is Michael Piercy, at Michael Piercy on IG.
Great. And we'll put that in the show note. Mike, thank you so much for the wisdom today, man. I had such a great time. I mean, we can always talk about New York Sport Club next time, because I didn't even know that. So again, thank you so much. I love that our values align, and I'm happy that we're able to share a great conversation, and I'm hoping the listener here get a lot out of it, especially, you know, the parents, the athletes out there. And again, guys, Mike's a great resource. Make sure you reach out to him and ask him questions. He's obviously very approachable.
Thank you, sir.
Don't be intimidated by the guns. Very approachable, guys. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.